Hello, I'm Robert, and this is to helping people scared of many things, fact check and science blogger. And this one, it's one of these Nostradamus prophecies. They keep on coming up over and over again, and all the sensationalist press are running with this series of very dire prophecies for 2021. And despite his reputation for accuracy, Nostradamus is not accurate at all. He made only one prophecy for our times, and which may be about a pope accidentally doing something that led to a war restarting in July 1999. And this did not happen, nothing even remotely resembling that prophecy, which is the only one with a date in our times. So what are the things that they prophesied? Well, it's based on a website called the Yearly Horoscope, and they did a similar prediction last year, and most of those were not fulfilled. So I'll bring up their website there. So they did prophesy a serious disease, but that's not such a big deal because it was in the news quite a lot last year, the idea that we could have a pandemic coming up. Bill Gates was reported on it. Then there was this tabletop exercise. Indeed, what actually happened was probably much less serious than it would have been if we hadn't had all this preparation based on people. I'm not particularly expecting 2020, but they did expect it to happen sometime in the next several years, several decades or so, that we'd have another pandemic. It's not a difficult projection to make. And then there were questions, people bring up issues with how prepared we are with it. So let's go and look through them here. City will be attacked at night. I mean, nothing about that, unless they're always having cities being attacked by night anyways. A plague predicted, so that's the one. And it wasn't actually a plague, of course. It's a coronavirus, it's a virus, not a plague. We want to be strict about it. That Vladimir Putin will be assassinated and Donald Trump will suffer from a mysterious disease. You might say, oh well, COVID-19 is a mysterious disease, but it wasn't. It's a well-known disease when he got it. It wasn't a mysterious disease, they knew what he was, and he was over it quite quickly because of the treatments he got, and very quick, prompt, and then because he was a lucky one. Big financial crisis. It wasn't a stock market crash. It was the result of it was a recession. That England will have a new king and the Queen will die. That obviously didn't happen. That a new pope in the Catholic Church, and that didn't happen. I know we've got 2-3 days left, but it's not like all these things going to happen in the next few days. And the other things are kind of very obvious things that happen every year. And so their 2020 prediction was not where you wouldn't go there and use that as a prediction for 2021 based on their predictions for 2020. So the reason is, and that's about the fictional pandemic that I talked about. And they said, I forgot to say, it said a member of Trump's family would die in an accident. That hasn't happened. Not all likely. All those things happen in the next 3 days. And Putin has mentioned that. And the thing is that first of all, this particular site has predicted many things, and if you look at that list, a lot of them are things that are likely to happen sometime in the next 10 years. Nobody knows which year. I mean, things like the Queen's going to die. Well, at some point, she's I forget her age, but she's old enough, so you'd expect her she's not likely to last many more years, although her life expectancy, even for an old person, is usually mentioned in years. So, it's a reasonably safe thing that at some point, if you keep on making that prediction, then sometime in the next 10 or 20 years, then you can expect it to succeed. And this is the Dixon effect, that she did this. She predicted all sorts of things. She predicted World War III in 1958, Russia to beat America to the moon, cure for cancer in 1967, Holocaust in the 1980s, all sorts of strange things. And amongst all those, world peace in the year 2000, China fights armies of United Rome in 2020. These are the things that she predicted that obviously didn't happen. And then she also predicted a few things that did happen. And as a result, she's got the reputation as being a psychic that can see the future. And this is called the Dixon effect, where people pay attention to the few things she got right, almost right, if you squint at them and kind of look sideways at them, and they ignore all these things she said would happen that didn't happen. So it's similar to that with Nostradamus, and it's even more so with this website. Then they predicted quite a few things, and then you've got to bear in mind they're just one site of many websites. So there are lots of websites making these predictions for one of several websites, all making these crazy predictions for 2020. For one of them to get one of the things that they said almost right is hardly a very resounding success. And so what they're predicting for 2021, predicting a zombie apocalypse, and that's zombies are impossible. If something's dead, then its lungs aren't working, it hasn't got any circulation for its blood. You would, in principle, be able to survive a few minutes if you were running without any circulation in your blood and without any. But then if you go and look even further forward, look a bit more carefully at that, you find you couldn't even last seconds in that situation. You just wouldn't have the oxygen to stay conscious, although your muscles in principle would still have the energy to be able to run if you did have some way of controlling them, but you wouldn't. So would be able to run for maybe a few minutes if you didn't have the problem. You've got no circulation in your blood and that non-functioning brain. So no, zombies are totally impossible. They predict a famine, and you can't. There's actually the actual true prediction of the FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, which is obviously much better than Nostradamus. To go to them to predict what's going to happen in the future, they predict a record surplus, not far off 1 billion tons of grain. And the reason is that our agriculture has been very resilient to the pandemic. Physical distancing measures didn't make much difference to farming activities. And you can imagine a farmer in a tractor is not much affected by the need to keep physical distance from everyone else. And it's mainly with the packaging of the food, but a lot of that is automated, and then transport. So there's actually very little effect on farming. The main effect that would have been on the economics of the situation, that the farmers going out of business because their country is face economic collapse, and due to the IMF $1 trillion fund, then that was prevented. And then all the not be able to find things in shops, that was just the supply chain, huge factories full of food, but they just couldn't wash the toilet paper and the frozen peas, whatever, fast enough to the shelves to supply them when people started panic buying. But there's plenty of food. That's about the $1 trillion war chest, which is what stopped the countries from getting many of the countries that supply food. Then they could have been in very serious trouble, and we could have had quite a significant famine if they hadn't saved their economies. Then Muslims will lead the world, and this is not true at all as well. It's particularly EU. So if you look at this is a kind of common thing. People say, they keep on saying, the EU is going to be Muslim in 10 years. That's not true at all. It's which can be a bit scary for Christian people, that they think that the religion of their country that is used to Christianity is going to change, and that's not going to happen. So it's currently 4.9%. This is a very high projection for 2050. It could be 14% with a lot of immigration. Could be 7.4%. And then you talk, and this is what they take up at the moment. They're 4.9%. Look, most countries, it's just a few percent. The only one that goes above 10% that I could see is Bulgaria. So it's not something that's going to happen. And in the world as a whole, the Muslims in the world are going to increase by 70%. That doesn't mean that 8% goes to 78%. It means 8%, 10% goes to 17%. If you've got a country where you've got 10%, if it was increasing that much, that obviously not increasing. And here, so they've got a 4.9% to 14%. That would be a 300% increase. I think 5 nearly. Anyway, so, but if you look a little bit closer at why that's happened, but then if you look at it, Christians are also growing very fast compared to the average. They're increasing 34, according to that particular prediction, which was made in 2015. I don't know how true it is today, but that's just to give you an idea. As Buddhists, that's my particular religion, actually decreasing compared with the rest of the world, with the average. The very large numbers, but they're decreasing. So if you look at it at the fertility rates, then it's 2.9. Then if you look at the world, it's between 2.2 and 2.9 for the Muslim. But if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, 4.2 to 5.2, that's one child difference, but that's with lots of children. If you look at Europe, it's 1.6 to 2.1. So it would seem there's quite a significant increase of the Muslim population fertility compared with non-Muslims. But if you drill behind it, then what you see is that I should include that video. I forgot to include it. But if you look at all the countries, then the Muslim countries, their fertility is dropping very rapidly, just along with non-Muslim countries. And it so happens that some of them have quite high fertility to start with, but they're dropping very fast. And even if you look at, even in Europe, then if you look a bit more closely at the EU, then the immigrants to the EU have a fertility 62% above the average, but native-born immigrants have a fertility rate that's only 19% higher. So it's not the religion, and they came to the conclusion that it's not the religion that's the important factor. I should indent that. They looked at 3 places: Spain, where most are immigrants, Bulgaria, where most are native, and Greece, which is a significant share of both. And their findings suggest that immigrant status and their socioeconomic status are more important than religion in terms of explaining the high fertility. So the thing is that if you're an immigrant and if you're also very poor, then you tend to have more children, irrespective of your religion. So these high fertility rates of Muslims are much more to do with whether you're an immigrant or whether you have a low income. And you tend to, people who have poor, if you've got poor healthcare, weaker healthcare, you tend to have more children. And so the figures, world figures for Muslims don't tell you much unless you look a bit closer and see how many of the Muslim countries are countries which are very poor. Like in sub-Saharan Africa, there's some very poor regions for Muslims, and how many have high levels of child mortality, issues with education, whatever the issues are. Like for instance, Ethiopia is Muslim. I'm pretty sure Ethiopia is Muslim. Let me just check. No, I think I may have left out of it. Oh, I've got to do this. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that Ethiopia is Muslim, which is rather, you remember that song about how they don't know that it's Christmas, which was rather ironic since they were actually Muslim. So, Ethiopia. Anyway, Ethiopia, Islam is the second largest religion. So what's the first religion in Ethiopia? I think many of what is it? (36). So anyway, a third of the population of Ethiopia is Muslim, and there, of course, they've had lots of. Let's have a look at religion here. Oh, so it is 62% Christianity. Ah, well. I didn't know that. So, I mean, I didn't know this, that it's a very ancient Christian tradition in Ethiopia. I didn't know they're the majority. Anyway, but certainly there's a lot of very poor Muslims in Ethiopia, and lots of them in sub-Saharan Africa, just as there are of other religions as well. And so you should focus on that when you're looking at, are they really a high fertility rate than other religions, and it's not very clear at all. So, as you see with Europe, and so immigrants, when they come into Europe, because they come from countries which are generally, because they're especially if they're refugees, then they're going to be very poor people who've lost much of what they used to have, and who often come from situations where they're quite deprived backgrounds originally, and those are the very people that you expect to have high fertility, because it's when people feel that they are at risk, they tend to have lots of children. The children help to look after their family and help to help them as they get older, especially if there's no job security and no pension. Then people tend to have lots of children, especially, and if the children are dying, then they have more of them. And so if you have a high child mortality, and even if they're given access to contraception, they still, because they've got this reason for having children, they still are likely to have lots of children. So, so the refugees arriving in the EU tend to have more children than because they tend to be of a background of the socio-economic and health status that leads to having many children. And then when they come to the EU, then their fertility drops, and can drop quite quickly, especially if you're born in the EU from refugee parents. Then you're not likely to have in turn a high fertility. Then solar storms, then they can't do much to us. That's been much misunderstood over the. It used to be thought that they would, but now we know they don't. There's only one example ever of a solar storm that caused a power cut in Quebec in 1989, and our step up and down transformers are much more hardened since then, and the studies that said it could be $1 trillion damage to the United States and so on, and cause blackouts for months, were based on using old models of transformers that are just not being used anymore, and it's not accurate. And that's in the very worst case, and also not realizing quite how patchy it is, that the bite lines here are the ones where you have a significant risk of that particular power line being damaged by a solar storm. So most of the US is not damaged in case of a solar storm either, not at risk at all. And they obviously harden the power companies harden the power lines they know are at risk. There's a comet will hit Earth, then I've talked about this before in my previous videos. No, that's the comets fly by at huge distances, and the closest any has come was 6 times the distance of the moon, and in 1690. And there is a risk 1.3 million years in the future, but it's not a near future significant risk. So from the flyby of Gliese 710. And then they talk about this particular asteroid. Which particular one did they mention? 2009 KF1. This is just a random asteroid. It orbits between Mars and Jupiter and never gets closer than Mars to Earth. That's very, very far away. But no significant risk from that asteroid. A devastating earthquake will destroy California. Then California can't be destroyed by any earthquake. Its fault line is just not long enough. It can't sink into the sea. There's nowhere, anywhere in the world that could lead to something like that. It's got to be localized to San Andreas fault and the regions nearby, or some other fault lines there where there can be earthquakes. And you do have to do earthquake preparation if you're in California. It is a risk. It's something that if you're there, then you will have done you will probably done exercises and then learned how to duck, hold, cover if there is an earthquake, and so on. And you probably have your earthquake kit in case the water is cut off and your food is not available for a few days while they are getting ready if there's an earthquake. But the mega tsunami of San Andreas is quite impossible. You don't even get mega tsunamis there. You never can. So. And then American soldiers will have brain and chip implants. They probably think about Elon Musk very much hyped up Neuralink, which is actually, it's not at all what it seems to be. I talked in a previous video about how we don't know how the brain works. We don't know how memories are stored. You can't read people's thoughts. The very idea of a neural link from our brain, it is to computers. The most they can do is expect something where you could use thinking in particular ways, sort of learn to adjust your brain waves in some way, and you can do that, and that then can let you to very clumsily move a mouse around on a screen. You can basically do the equivalent of what Stephen Hawking used to do with the twitching his cheek, and you can make it seem a bit more fancy by trying to do that via neurons rather than by moving muscles in your cheek. And it's very primitive what you can do, at the moment in terms of trying to connect neurons to computers. And his particular device is of most interest for helping patients with very severe Alzheimer's. It doesn't record thoughts, it records the stimulus that your brain cells need in order to lay down short-term memories. So if you have an Alzheimer's type problem with laying down short-term memories, then it'll record the way you do that from your brain, then send it back and amplify it, and that will help you set down short-term memories. It's absolutely useless unless you have a problem with setting down short-term memories. It's not going to help you to remember something that you thought of yesterday. It's going to help you to put something into the memory today. So if you get the stimulus today, then what you were just thinking about a few seconds before can be laid down into your memory. This stimulus is not going to tell you what you were thinking about when it was recorded. It's just not the way it works. And then the last one says that Pope Francis will bring people closer to the church. Well, I mean, that's just a kind of, I think many people, Pope Francis is seen quite favourably, I think, by many people outside the Catholic Church. So it's quite reasonable to say that he's having a beneficial effect on the world. But do remember that that they predicted that he would die in 2020. So you can't really. This is hardly much of a thing to base that he will bring people closer to the church or whatever it is they're saying in 2021. It's not based on them, but maybe based on other things. Then he's probably helping people, at least in the sense of that the church is becoming very careful, caring of many people. Not necessarily they're becoming Christians. And then, so now I talk about Nostradamus' track record, and so I'll just end with that. And so I've got it up here, and this was the actual prophecy he made in 1991, year 1999, 7 months. From the sky will come the great king of terror, bringing back to life the great king of the Angkor. Before and after Mars reigns by good fortune, and Mars refers to war, they think. So before and after there's going to be war, before July 1999, and the rest of it, this shows how enigmatic they are, but that is how it was interpreted. It just seems to be that in July 1999, a possibly appeasing pope will in some way stir up a leader with Mongol or possibly Lombard connections, and refer with the result that a previously raging war will accidentally flare up again. And nothing even remotely like that happened in July 1999. And there's no way to, I don't think anyone's found a way to kind of match events in July 1999 plausibly with that quatrain. They just conveniently forget about it. But it's the only one with a date that is in our time. So, the ones, so you get lots of fake ones. So you get things that like a fake quatrain that supposedly predicts 9/11, but it was just made up by someone after. You could easily, obviously, it's easy to predict something in a false, fake quatrain that was made up after the events that it predicts. And then you get ones by using very vague quatrains that you can switch around until they somehow fit the current events, but that have happened after the events. But Nostradamus' quatrains have never been used to predict something unexpectedly in advance. Only predict unexpected things after they've happened. So they're useless for predicting anything. And we don't actually use prophecy. You don't get, Trump doesn't have a state prophet, and the United Kingdom doesn't have a state prophet. We just don't have a job of prophet anymore. They used to way back then. And churches don't have, the Pope doesn't have a Catholic prophet, and the Anglican Church doesn't have an Anglican Church prophet either. So we don't get that in religion either. We get people using astrology and astrology, looking at tea leaves and so on, but it's not taken that seriously because it doesn't work basically. It's quite useful for, I think it has its benefits, it has its value for some people. It may help you to have a less blinkered view on the future, by opening up your mind to other possibilities that you didn't think of, as long as you don't take it too seriously. And something's been predicted for tomorrow, and it's something you never thought was possible, and maybe tomorrow, something like that becomes a possibility, partly because you had that prediction, which opened your mind to things that you wouldn't have thought of before. So I think I'm not saying I think an awful lot of it can work like that, and that may be why some people find astrology and other things like that beneficial in their lives, because it's opening up to new possibilities that they wouldn't have thought of. But it's not necessarily, it could be that it works more the other way around, that the prediction helped the thing to happen, rather than that the prediction was based on actually seeing the thing before it did happen. So anyway, and of course they forget all the ones that they predict that didn't happen. So anyway, hopefully this helps some of you. So I'm getting quite a few PMs and emails and things about people saying, oh, all these dire things going to happen in 2021, and can you do a debunk? So here's my debunk, and I hope it helped you.